What's it like to survive RimWorld for 100 days as orcs? Grab your warhammer, follow me, and let's find out. We're starting this challenge with a tribe of 5 orcs and their pet warg, who is a beautiful specimen. We're also starting this challenge in a dark forest biome, which is a modded biome that adds many types of trees and some other types of creatures as well. Naturally, like any RimWorld challenge, we start out by cutting down a bunch of trees to build our base. I started the base off with a very small little hut so we could put all our food and whatnot in there so these wild animals in this dark forest wouldn't eat all our bread, cheese, and berries. Our first night was spent huddled together next to the river with the calm sounds of the moving water just ushering us into dreamland. Peaceful nights like this would not last though. The very next day we began planting crops so we would be able to sustain ourselves in this land and we wouldn't all starve to death and die. Of course, just like any beginning colony in RimWorld, our very first crop was rice. We had so many tall trees around us, it was almost like an endless field of resources, so we began using that wood to build a beautiful little hut sort of thing that we would all live in as a community, and we would all have a bedroom, and it would all be very warm because we would all share the heat from our torches and whatnot. Not too long after that, a bunch of alpha beavers entered the area, which was amazing for them because there were so many trees to eat. By day 5, we had planned out a massive fortification around our lands, which was obviously the right call because we were now being raided by a filthy, scurvy dog from a local enemy faction. He was coming alone with a pirate flag, so we were ready to cut him down. And just like that, cut him down we did, like George Washington with an axe against a cherry tree, baby. After we knocked him down, we even shoved a little sand in his wounds to keep him from bleeding out, and we decided we'd capture him and attempt to enslave him. We didn't have a proper prison, so I just kind of stuffed him in that room where we kept our wood and our bread. He had a terrible infection in his arm, so we went ahead and just cut that right off for him. Then I got a nice clip of everybody laying warm on the floor in our big community hut. Sometime later, our warg ended up killing one of the alpha beavers, and they got really pissed off about that and decided to try and attack our colonist. Unfortunately, though, alpha beavers were the least of our worries. We were actually being raided by a decent-sized group of these disgusting mantis creatures. Not only were the mantis tough, but they were also ugly as shit, and they were coming right at us. Eventually, we had shot most of them enough to down them or kill them, and then we brought our slave over with the warg to just kind of start biting at them and whatever else we could do, and eventually we did win, thankfully. I decided that mantis slaves would probably be great for the colony, though also extremely dangerous. After growing some cotton and researching some things, we realized we could turn cotton into cloth, which is quite the advancement. We enslaved our mantis prisoner just before there was a massive slave rebellion between our 2 slaves. Unfortunately, before we even knew the rebellion was going on, our slave Orange was halfway out of the map, and we ended up unfortunately not being able to catch him in time, so we couldn't beat on him and take him back home. Just after that, we were now being raided by a group of vicious and very scurvy pirates that were wearing voodoo masks and carrying flintlock pistols. It was a very strange technology, seeing how our orcs hadn't mastered gunpowder yet, but luckily they had mastered traps and whatnot, so most of the raiders ended up dying in our traps before they even got near us where we could shoot at them. They eventually ended up fleeing the area, and even left one of their comrades behind that we could take prisoner and enslave and force him to cook in our kitchen for our orcs. By day 25, we had a grand slave rebellion, but that was okay because we quickly squashed their rebellious souls with the new flintlock weaponry we had acquired. And then late one night in the community hut, I found one of our orcs who was blacked out from drinking so much. I just thought that that was interesting. Shortly after that, 3 of our colonists had caught malaria, and then just after that, we had our very first snowfall of this colony, which was great for everyone except for the slaves who had metal collars around their necks, not very comfortable. But other than the beautiful snow in this land, we had other good news. We had a trade caravan coming, and they were actually willing to buy all the wood, which was perfect for us because we had so much wood that we chopped down in this dark forest, and we ended up buying 2 Labrador retrievers off of them. I named the dogs Bob and Bobby, but, with an I. While the traders and the orcs were having a beer, a large man-hunting group of rats entered the area. Luckily for us, though, they hit our traps and they all basically died, so it wasn't a big deal. What was a big deal, though, is shortly thereafter that we were being attacked by a group of raiders who were wanting to come and sack our beautiful fortress and steal all our goodies and turn our orcs into slaves. Unfortunately for them, though, most of them hit our traps hidden in the dark forest and the other cowards ran away. We ended up having a very majestic and mystical looking bear-deer creature enter the area. I considered trying to kill it, but I thought it would just completely destroy the colony. Then we had Red, our unofficial orc leader, begin making helmets for everyone in the colony to keep our brains safe. We began constructing bridges across the river to make easy access to the western woodlands. That way, in case we were being raided or things like that, we could maybe run that way or, anything really. A few days later, I decided it was probably time we start doing some raiding, so we began raiding a local farming worksite. Upon arriving at the farming worksite, we found 2 humans who were willing to die for the food and whatnot that they were farming, so we happily obliged them. Days later, after returning home, we decided to celebrate the event with a drum party in the community hut, and it was beautiful. Everyone was laughing and drinking and dancing, and it was awesome. But you know what wasn't awesome? Being raided once again in the dead of night by a bunch of medieval mutton-head fools who were going to try and kill us and take all our stuff again. As was true for every raid before as well, they stepped on our traps, most of them died, the others ran away, easy peasy. With winter upon us though, even though it was about to end soon, we were actually running pretty low on food. It turns out we hadn't grown enough crops for our growing population of slaves and colonists, so we decided to hunt a Orcs, which is some sort of mystical creature here in these forests, but we didn't care, we killed it and ate it. And then, speaking of food, we had a massive group of man-hunting fox enter the area, and they would be wonderful for killing and then turning into stew and whatnot. They made for easy eating as they just stepped on traps, basically committing suicide. But now we were being raided again, and I found it very interesting. They were a group of mantis, and, one of them actually looked like some kind of pirate, or he was very bougie in his attire. Now, the mantis could take our traps a lot easier, so some of them got pretty far, but luckily our flintlock pistols provided enough power for the projectile to penetrate their mantis armor, if you will. Then, though, we had actually researched some decent armor, so we made Red forge some flat-top helmets. So these were made out of iron, and they would be some nice brain buckets to protect our vital organ inside our skull. Unless a bullet caves in the helmet and crushes our head. We found the perfect opportunity to try out our new brain buckets, though, when a group of pirates wielding these types of weapons entered the area and decided to descend upon our fortress. But these filthy pirates were no match for our orcs and their intellect and, their traps and their subpar aim with, these flintlock weaponry firing little metal balls and whatnot. And then by day 75, we were being raided again. I'll sure tell you there are quite a bit of raids that continue to happen throughout this video and throughout this colony. I'm playing on Cassandra Classic. I believe on losing is fun, if I'm not mistaken, but it just seems like a lot of raids to me. But anyhow, we beat their asses and sent them home packing, the ones that didn't die. Well, most of the ones that didn't die. Some of them that were laying on the ground got killed by our mantis, and then he began eating their corpses. That is one big-ass bug. Speaking of how big and scary the mantis is, during a slave rebellion, he began running at us on a bridge, attempting to attack us, until we eventually beat him down, and we ended up taking him back to his slave bed, but he is one scary fella. But the slave rebellion must have scared the shit out of Reb because he started having a heart attack. Luckily though, some herbal medicine ended up fixing it. I don't really know how, but it did. I'm assuming we just kind of rubbed it on his chest. But after that though, the wounds we inflicted on our mantis when he tried to rebel ended up causing an infection, so we removed his claw and also just his right arm totally. Some time later, we had some wanderers wander into our area begging for silver. So instead of giving them silver, we kidnapped one to enslave and then murdered the other 2. They wanted silver, we killed 2 of them and gave 1 a home. It's not a bad deal. After some time passed though, we had a human calling from a distance stating that she would join us, but we would have to face off against 2 large groups of raiding parties from 2 different factions. I thought to myself, well, we could handle that, so I did accept that, and then, of course, she joined us shortly after. As you'll see in just a moment though, this is the beginning of the end and an absolutely awful decision on my part. Not long after, we got a message that we were now being raided, and I thought to myself, wow, that was quick. The quest said it would be within 5 days. This is more like about a day or so. As the rain poured down upon the land, we began killing every single raider and made sure that they were either dead or injured and would die shortly on their way home back to their colony. We even chased one lad down by the doors and just began beating on him with our mace until he was nothing but a puddle of guts. Then a little time passed and we were being raided again, and I thought, oh, this is the second raid from the quest where we accepted the human and allowed her to join us. This raid took its toll on us. A lot of our traps were already used up, but we did end up defeating them after some time. Now, the reason I've been talking about this is because these were not the raids that were part of the quest. No, these were just 2 normal raids, and the raids from the quest have yet to happen. But then guess what I realized? We were now being raided by a massive group of people who were attacking us, I believe, from multiple angles, and I was like, oh, these are the raids from the quest. I thought, well, maybe I could handle this group of raiders, and then came another massive group of raiders who intended on breaching our walls with ye old-timey pirate grenades, and I was like, oh my god, maybe we should just hide. The raiders began breaching our walls. I had our orcs armed to the teeth with, well, armor and swords and pistols and grenades to try and, fight fire with fire. But unfortunately, that would not be enough. And then came our first casualty. One of our orcs ended up dying, and unfortunately, the others would soon follow suit. We attempted to fight as best we could, but they really just completely blindsided us and overpowered us. Those filthy, scurvy pirates ended up kidnapping the surviving orcs that we had left, while our orcs looked at their comrades laying on piles of burnt rubble on the ground. And unfortunately, we didn't even have one single colonist that we could use who was not in a psychic wandering state to try to save any of our people to maybe rebuild the colony after these raiders inevitably left. So I was forced to watch as the pirates carried out their limp, bleeding bodies into the woodlands to the west, and then eventually out of the map back to their home territories where they would most likely enslave them. Our only orc, who was in the community hut, was still in a psychic wandering state, so of course the pirates gathered around him and quickly descended on him with their picks and spears and everything they had. I sat and watched as the home that we tirelessly built together with our orcs burned and burned and burned. The raiders even hunted down our man in black and chased him to the river, where they inevitably caught up with him and began killing him. And as the rain pours down on the rubble of the colony that we had built and once knew as a joyous, happy place, I realized this all happened on the 90th day, so we did not survive 100 days in RimWorld as the orcs, unfortunately. And I sit here pondering to myself, what went wrong? What would have happened if I did not make the decision to take in one lonely human colonist that was just needing some help? What would have happened? Would we have survived? Would things be different? I suppose we will never know. Wait a minute. Did you see that? No, I must just be seeing things. I thought I saw... No, I'm not seeing things. That's it. That's lightning. Oh my god. Look what's happened. Yes, I know. Lightning, yes. What a cheap trick to bring Red back to life, okay? Yeah, we're just 10 days shy, okay? So don't give up on me just yet. And don't give up on these orcs, baby. I'm going to give myself a free 10 days here to bring him back to life just to survive, okay, for the video. Today actually marks the 2nd anniversary of the first time we ever uploaded anything onto this channel. And it was actually a Let's Play video of me starting a RimWorld colony of orcs, tribal orcs. So I'm going to cut myself a little bit of slack here. After Red buried all his dead compadres, we ended up having a refugee named Monkey call from nearby, and he was offering to stay with us a little bit, you know, just in exchange for working around the colony and whatnot, so we accepted. We ended up having Red build a campfire and then scavenge for any of the food around the colony that hadn't been torched, blown up, or smeared in vomit, blood, intestines, you know, that sort of thing. And he would actually cook the two of them some nice, well, I guess, scorched carrot meals. But the 10 days went quickly, and then day 100 was upon us. Monkey and Red gathered on the bridge with their pistols, preparing for what was to come. We had an absolutely massive group of raiders who were coming to try and kill any survivors and possibly take over the base. And Red and Monkey stood on the bridge with their pistols, ready to go out in a blaze of glory. And so they did, went out in a blaze of glory there on that bridge. They at least managed to take out one of the filthy raiders, and that was plenty enough for them. But that is the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope nobody's mad at me for bringing Red back to life for the last 10 days. I'm going to cut myself a little bit of slack. Like I said, today marks the 2nd anniversary of the first time we ever uploaded a video on this channel. So I just want to thank you guys so much for all the time you've spent with me and whatnot. And I really appreciate you guys, and I appreciate the support for the videos and for the channel and just me in general. You guys are an awesome community. You guys are just wonderful. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.